Jennifer Hammond. Yeah. And Adriana's here. Oops. I always forget that the things are always backwards on the videos. So we're so excited. I am so excited because we're going to talk about hurricanes. Yeah. I know nobody likes hurricanes, but it's really important to be prepared for hurricanes. And so there are things that we need to know. And recently I moved to Florida. And so I have realized I grew up in Florida, but hurricanes were kind of a thing of the past. And I've been living in Washington, D.C. for 27 years. So I haven't really thought so much about hurricanes recently. And now, in the last couple of years, Florida's gotten hit every year. And so it's really important. And I think we're seeing more and more with fires out in California and tornadoes and such. So I really want to focus on hurricanes and what do people need to know? Because there are things that if you don't know, it could literally cost you your entire house, right?
Exactly. Yes. And I think we're going to start with the basics. That will be your policy.
Yes. Let's talk about
I'm not going to dive into the whole details of insurance, but that's something just for you to get in touch with your agent. Just as we're driving into the storm season, it's very important for you to know what kind of coverage you have. Because a lot of us, we know that we have coverage for water. We know that we're covered for fire, but now the insurances are putting caps on the coverage. And we need to know how much is that. Will that be enough to cover if we have a hurricane? Will that be enough to cover if my dishwasher overloads? All these type of things we have to keep in mind. And there's the only way that we know those details and those specific things in your policies to talk to our insurance agent.
And so
check your policy.
And one of the things I recently was talking with an insurance guru, insurance guy that we both know, and he gave me 3 things. And I'm just going to say this since you brought it up about your insurance policy. When you call your insurance person, you should know what your deductible is going to be, because sometimes people they wanted their payment to be lower, and then they raised their deductible so high that whatever that deductible is, if it was for the roof or if it was for flooding or whatever, your deductible is so high, the insurance company isn't going to pay a dime. You're going to pay everything out of your own pocket, almost as if you didn't have property insurance. So number 1, understand what that deductible is. And then number 2, what you just said about really understanding what's covered and what isn't covered. One of the things that this guru that we both know told me, and I was like, is you need to understand different insurance companies also define damage differently, whether it's wind, like it's wind mitigation protection, or whether it was considered under your flood policy addendum, or, how is that defined in the policies? It's different in different policies. So if you've changed companies, you should make sure you know what that is. And then third is you should make sure that you have active insurance, because so many people, something happens and there's a lapse. And then once a storm is named, you can't get property insurance issued. Especially like if you're going to buy or if you're going to sell, and that's a totally different story. But just those 3 things I've learned, and I realized I just want to share that with as many people as possible, because it really is important. So we start with property insurance, and then what else do they need to know for hurricanes?
I will start going through contractors, remediation companies that you will call in case of emergency, and start looking at the reviews, check their websites, check what services they provide, what areas do they service. Just when that happens, you already have the contacts and you already have some sort of information about the company, instead of like once you're overwhelmed, hurricane has hit and you're just going off Google.
Yeah. Yeah. Because and I was going to say the worst time, I do that with my real estate clients too. I'm like, first of all, like a home inspector, you do not want to be looking for a home inspector when you've just signed the offer for a thing and you're like frantically looking for a home inspector. You should have interviewed and gotten to know your home inspector beforehand. And it's the same thing, like you just said, to make sure that a company like your company that will do remediation and property damage and come in and see what's wrong. It's so important to have that already understood and know what contractors are you going to rely on, what's the process. You need to understand that, and relationships. I'm going to say the other thing, just like your property insurance, you should have a relationship with that person so that you can call them. And it's not just a 1-800 number with faceless people with customer service in another country, maybe, that can't really help you. That's a problem,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly, because of course, when we get storms, there's plenty of companies that are going to be in the area try to give you services, but some of them are not even local, like you were saying. Like these are companies that come from other states trying to rush into the opportunity to service during the hurricane. But it's better to always get in touch with local businesses that understand the challenges and everything. They have the contacts locally to help you and just give you the response that you need when the hurricane hits.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is really important, again, to be prepared. It's not just the Boy Scout motto, be prepared.
Exactly. Yes, especially I always tell my customers emergency management plans are normally popular within the commercial space, but it's important to have one for your home too, because a lot of us, some people will have magnets and flyers of their preferred vendors in a drawer, but then once the storms hit, they realize that that company is not even in business anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So emergency management plan, very important.
And like I said, relationships, like you just said, you might think that that company is the greatest company next to sliced bread, but when was the last time you actually talked to them and you really know that they're still in business and that, I hate to say, but especially after the pandemic and through the pandemic and all, life is uncertain and you never know. There could be a death in the family and all of a sudden that was a family business and now it's closed. It's no longer around. So really take the time to make sure you're in touch with those companies. And so that brings me to one thing I really want you to share, and that's your story. I mean, you have a really powerful story because your heart is so in what you do because of your own personal tragedy. Will you share about it?
Yeah, for sure. Like 2 years ago, we went through a fire at our home. And like any other homeowner, it was something that we just, in the least expected moment, we were just taking a day off. And then when we come back, our whole house was damaged by fire. So we spent 92 days in a hotel with our son. We thought it was going to be a quick fix. As a homeowner, you don't understand the whole detail of a remediation process and what it entitles. So people, fortunately, PureClean was able to restore my home and explain everything to the detail. But just to get to PureClean, it took several vendors for me to just, vet them out. And just in that moment where you're so overwhelmed and you're going through so much fear and anxiety from what your tragedy that you're going through, it's hard to make the right decisions. And if you don't have the proper information, you can make a big mistake.
And you're emotional at that time too. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you start to get emotional about something. I mean, like when you're in a hotel and life has been radically changed and against your will by something unforeseen, like a fire or a flood or a hurricane, I think it feels at that moment very emotional and very unfair. And so it's very easy to make bad decisions. And you came across a couple scoundrels, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it was just, I mean, it becomes into a battle, when something like this happens. There are companies that literally are listening to firefighter raters. They go into the residences and they just come right away, sign here, sign there. And it's a perfect moment. People are vulnerable. They're going through a tragedy. So they cannot even process everything straight. So sometimes you sign a contract that will bind you to pay thousands of dollars for something that literally doesn't require that much to be remediated.
Yeah. So, and then you share the rest of your story. So then you decided what?
Well, I said, now that we're going through this, and we have the perfect background for it because I have an environmental science background. And
Ah,
I feel confident that we can make a difference in the community, not only by providing like a professional service, but be there for people knowing that, I know exactly how they're feeling, how they're going, what they're going through, what they need as guidance.
yeah.
You don't need to make the decisions on the first day. You just need information to start working step by step into the correct way, and just get your stuff resolved. But for me, it was just, it's been such a great journey after the fire. Yeah, it was something unfortunate, but now I can see why it led me to this.
Yeah. And I want you to share about your company, but before you do that, one thing I know we talked about before is, so for people who are moving, because we have a lot of people moving from other states down to Florida, and I moved from Washington D.C. down here, and so I definitely can relate to this. But will you share some of the things that might I want to say that are different from being in another state that when you move to Florida and you're going to buy a home, what are some of the things that they should be looking for?
First thing that sometimes those deals that seem too good to be truth, they are. If you go through a property and they're selling it for a price that is very, cheaper than the average, comparison homes in the area, check, if that house was during a hurricane, something happened, yeah, you might have a beautiful home that's already rebuilt and reconstructed, but what about the remediation process? What company did that? Did they have the documentation to show you that these people were licensed and certified to do so? That's one of the main things that I've seen with people moving from up north. They come find a home that, yeah, it was in a hurricane, but now it's beautiful and we love it. But then months afterwards, they find out there's mold behind their walls because it was not properly dried.
Yeah. And I
So
think
that's,
it's so sad because mold is so dangerous and it causes death. I mean, it
Mhm.
causes serious health issues, but it causes death. And again, people just don't realize that it's really prevalent down here and that you need to make sure.
Just those are environmental conditions that sometimes people up north are not used to it. So when they come here, even your daily practice is about opening windows. Up north, you have the luxury to do all those things. In here, it's a matter of keeping your structure safe and sound. It's not just a matter of comfort. Having your AC at the proper moisture levels to make sure that your home doesn't start growing things, microbial growth that is going to lead you to thousands and thousands of dollars in remediation in some cases. And with the hurricanes upon us, I mean, and things that happened before, sometimes people have gone through these issues in their homes and they're not properly done. They trust these experts, but they didn't research by one company. They fall in the hands of somebody and then, yes, they reconstruct their home, but it's not safe anymore. So it's very important to research, do your research and try to get a couple estimates, 3 estimates at least from different companies, and then you will know that the information is consistent.
And then one thing, we were just talking about hurricane prep and being prepared for a hurricane. I hate to bring this up because I always like to look at the positive and not so much the negatives. But one thing that I think is also really important to talk about is right after a hurricane, it's usually everybody's busy. And this is the hardest time to get somebody to your house. And yet I want you to talk about at least some of the worst case scenarios of not getting somebody there right away and it taking, a couple weeks before you really get somebody there and what kind of problems could be occurring if you can't get somebody out there right away.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing will be your insurance. If you didn't do enough in your own, because it's your responsibility. Even if the insurance doesn't send an adjuster for the first 2 weeks, it's your responsibility to start taking action. And most of the homeowners sit and wait before they know the insurance said, no, it was your responsibility to start mitigating this. You didn't pull the carpet, walls were wet, now you have mold, we are not gonna cover that.
Yep.
Any structural thing that is secondary damage for you not taking action immediately is not on us. So that's very important for the homeowners to know. Even if your insurance doesn't reply right away, you need to take action as soon as possible from a professional.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to understand that because again, as you just said, so often they're just immediately they think, well, it's not my responsibility. The insurance company is going to cover it. And that's just not true.
No, it's not. And that's the sad thing, especially with hurricanes. Insurances are flooded with claims. So it's gonna take sometimes a couple of weeks for them to send an adjuster on site. But it's your responsibility to take all damaged materials from the home and start getting all that wet stuff out so it doesn't start creating secondary damage that will not be covered under that. So that's very, very crucial for homeowners to be prepared in these cases, because I saw that with the last 2 hurricanes. People that were just waiting on response, even a reply for their insurance, and sit down and did nothing. Once we got to them, they had mold, and something that could have been a $5,000 project turned into a $20,000 remediation.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, as much as I don't like the negative, I do want to make sure that we forewarn people so that they're prepared again, so they can have a yay in the day and it doesn't turn into a disaster, because that's kind of unfortunately what happens. And, hindsight's 2020, but we want to learn from other people's mistakes anytime we
Yes.
can, instead of having to make every one of the mistakes ourselves. So I want people to know more about how to reach you and your company. Will you share a website, social media, anything you want to share?
Yeah, we're in all social media platforms, Pure Clean of Pinellas Park. Our phone number is 727-291-8988. So you can get in touch with us. We have a 24/7 line. So we operate all year in any holidays because we know that emergencies don't wait. So we're here for you and to assist all the surrounding counties in Tampa Bay.
Well, thank you. And I just adore you so much. And I'm going to ask you to lift your voice and say yay with me as we go off the air. Is that okay?
Of course, yes.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Yay!
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. We love what you do for the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.